die sessie self. Okay, maar record.
Okay, so this is Elmi, not Krista. This is Elmi. But I'm representing Krista, so you must now imagine me, a much younger person standing in front of you and sharing with you some ideas about brain-based learning and our students and how they prefer to learn. And that learning is actually a very complicated process. So I have 3 minutes, and roughly that's until 20 past.
Yeah, but we did some of the other things now already, so you can go.
So you just say when it's 5 minutes to start to it. Okay, so I'm going to use the next few minutes in the best possible way to give you some information that you may be interested in and that we can follow up on. I just want to acknowledge that I know that you've probably heard a lot about learning styles before. You've heard about brain dominance before, but also speak about brain, the lateral brain. And you probably have heard a lot about the Generation Y students and or the millennials. So I'm not going to teach you this. I'm just going to share you some of my experiences and also what we learned about brain-based learning and how we're using it. Okay. So what I'm actually just trying to say is, so how do I move it? Oh, is that I know you have heard a lot about that everybody doesn't learn in the same way, that assessments doesn't really always work for all of the students in the same way, but we need to assess them, we need to teach them. That's given facts. But maybe you've seen this before. It just demonstrates that if we assess them, saying that they must climb the tree, everybody is not a monkey that can climb a tree. Some of them may be elephants and some of them may be fishes. And that's why you sometimes see in your classes that some students interact in a different way. And sometimes some of them seems like they doesn't even interact, but they are probably busy interacting. So we have an idea of, a general idea of how class should look, and then you realize, okay, everybody doesn't learn in the same way as me. Before I go into the rest of the discussion, just keep in mind that we usually teach according to our own brain profiles. And so I'm actually probably, don't want to say teach, but sharing with you the information according to my own brain profile. And I'll share it with you. I'm left hemisphere dominant and right eye, right ear, and right hand. So I'll explain to you later on what that means. Okay, so now it has moved on. Interesting. As an icebreaker. Okay, nou gaan hy nie werk nie. Volgens die rest. I'm sorry. Ek is uitgelewer.
Share screen
Okay,
PowerPoint apart.
Leave it on, it's fine. Otherwise we will not have time. Okay, I wanted to do a very nice icebreaker with you, also to break my nerves down, but it's fine, I'm not going to do it. So I'm going to start with the dominance of brains, of one's brain. There it is. Okay. There's a lot written about somebody is left brain and somebody is right brain. But that's not true because we have two hemispheres. So we don't only have the left hemisphere and only a right hemisphere. So when we speak about brain-based learning, it's about using both hemispheres. But when we were born, one of these hemispheres were the dominant one already. So when you absorb information, dominant one switched on, and then it switched off, and then the non-dominant one switched on, and it switched off. So it's quite a slow process for a baby to integrate information. That's part of the learning and development. Now, we're adults. So what's supposed to happen now is that the dominant hemisphere must switch on and the non-dominant one must follow. So both in the end must work together. But when you're left hemisphere dominant, it means that naturally the left hemisphere will switch on. But it's in milliseconds that it happens. So when you present your students that has a dominant left hemisphere with logical facts, detail, when we planned and structured, the left hemisphere will be stimulated, and then immediately the right hemisphere should be activated to help them to have the whole brain function. The same is if you're right hemisphere dominant, then information that's creative, holistic, that's practical, that has pictures, that helps them to think out of the box, that will trigger the right hemisphere, and then the dominant or the non-dominant left hemisphere will follow. So what it actually boils down to is that we should try to present information in all these different ways that the brain works. So what I actually tried here was to give you the details and the facts and to structure it, but holistically we see it's the brain with the left and the right hemisphere. So that's the way I tried to activate both for both types of learners. I said that we use both hemispheres. If we did not do that, then the left hemisphere mum will do a salad like the left side, and the right hemisphere mum will do the salad like the right side. So fortunately, that doesn't happen. Now, the more interesting part for me is that we don't only have a dominant hemisphere, but we also, information is assimilated through your senses. So that information will also be taken in with a dominant sense. Now, you can just, easy to understand is that you have a dominant hand. So that's one of the ways, the tactile way of getting information to basically to go to your brain is using the dominant hand. Now, if you have a dominant right hand, it means that those people prefer to communicate in a written and verbal way. And you will also see that they communicate easier with detail. So what the left hemisphere likes to do, it sends through to the right preference, the right hand preference. The same is you have a dominant eye. Now it's easy to find out what your dominant eye is. I can give it here. Can I do that? Okay, so you just put your hands like this and you choose a point somewhere where you can look at something specifically with both eyes. And then you close your left eye. See what happens? You close your right eye and see what happens. When you closed your left eye and nothing happened, then your right eye dominant. So if you close your right eye, something happened, it means your left eye dominant. Can I ask, where is left eye dominant? Okay. Why do you think they are the minority in our group? Because we? But it's so nice that you're saying it because we have lots of students in our classes that feel they are weird. Typically, generalizing here, but that a student in, for example, accounting will work with a dominant left hemisphere, a dominant right hand. Does it make sense? And then let's go to the, we talked about the eye. The dominant eye will probably be, that's what one can expect, the right eye. And then also, if we look at the dominance of the ear, that will probably be the dominant ear also. Let's look at your dominant ear quickly. If somebody speaks to you behind you, which side will you turn your head? It's not very conscious way of doing it. In most cases, when somebody suddenly speaks behind you or there's a sound behind you, you will turn with your dominant ear to listen to the sound. And again, the right eye and the right ear take information to the left hemisphere that the left hemisphere likes to work with. The same here with the left hand, left eye, left ear to the right hemisphere. Now that sounds very interesting. It's so easy. You wanted to say something. That's what where the whole trick is, and everything comes in. So, what is it? Your right eye. Right eye, left ear. Okay. So, but you think your left hemisphere. Okay. Yeah. Right. That should actually be assessed. So, we're now just making a rough estimation here. Let's say you are left hemisphere dominant. So information that's more in detail, that's structured, where you can follow where the beginning and the end is, that contains a lot of facts. Those type of information will stimulate the left hemisphere, and then immediately after that the right hemisphere will be switched on, and the information can start to integrate. So, sorry, now I forget. You are right-handed. So the right hand speaks to the left hemisphere. That's fine. You are left ear. So now what happens now? That speaks to the right hemisphere. It's not the dominant hemisphere. Now it's fine because we have both hemispheres, but now the focus strikes the fan when you are too stressed. So the moment you become quite stressed, the non-dominant hemisphere works not that hard. We say just to make it more understandable, but it's not true, but it switches down, it switches off. So let's say it switches off. You're very stressed. Then what will happen? The information from the left eye will find it very difficult to get to the brain to be processed. So it's blocked. And then your left ear also. You think your left ear not. Right ear. No. Left ear. So what will happen here? Again, once the non-dominant hemisphere, this one, shuts down, it may feel like this one shuts down too. So that's why you get students, it seems like they stopped listening. Mothers will say, don't you listen when I talk to you? So maybe she speaks in a way that's not, that doesn't fit the preferred hemisphere, the preferred senses. But also when your child gets distressed, it may shut down too. So it's really, I try to simplify it now, but all of those have a lot of effects. We have students, probably lecturers too, who have, for example, a dominant right hemisphere, and all the senses, dominant senses, are also on the right hand side. So what's the thoughts coming up for you now? I usually feel Auxin. But it's actually fantastic, because if this person is not too stressed, then he or she has access to a dominant right hemisphere that prefers to work holistically, creatively, thinking a bit different than your left hemisphere dominant people, and they will have access to all this stuff that actually works like the left hemisphere. So they have a lot of access to both types of information. But then they must be a little bit relaxed. So we must be very careful. Now let's say with your kids, careful what we suggest to them. So if we make a negative suggestion, it can cause hemispheres to work a lot less and actually to shut down. So when one says to them, you're not going to pass your grade, you're not going to pass this year, whatever, then you're already suggesting failure. So then you start to get the shutdown process. We feel we motivate them, but we're actually doing the opposite. So if you can rephrase it in a more positive manner, you will get more optimal performance from it. That's the same in the work environment. If you work in a work environment that makes us anxious, you will not perform optimally because of this blockage of dominance and the hemispheric preferences that doesn't work optimally. So rather, have a message of, I believe in you, I want to support you, please, I'm available, come to me to help you, or have structures in place, or how can we put structures in place, etc. to help you. I know that's a lot of work, but in the end, one can benefit from it. So I think we must just start thinking about it. I know we're not going to change it immediately. So now I have some time still, Nicolette. Okay, now you must also remember, so that there's all these dominances, but also we have learners, students in our classes, that's more expressive, and then students that's more receptive. So what does that mean? Your receptive learner is your learner that absorbs the information. That will probably sit there in the class, will think really hard, and it may look like that person is not listening, but they are busy processing the information by reflecting about the information. When you're going to ask that person to answer a question now at that moment, it may be a bit difficult. Because they first have to process the information, then they answer. Your expressive learners will easily talk about the question, and while they're talking, they start to make sense. So those are the learners students that you sometimes get in a test or exam. They write a lot of nonsense, and in the end, they start to actually answer the question. Now that's not acceptable. One can't just say you're expressive and that's why you're doing that. Or you're receptive and that's why you're taking some time to finish the question paper. So we help when we see the students to get more of a balance between receptive and expressive. I think for you it's important to know that you will have students communicate easier in class, and then you will have the students who find it a bit difficult. It may look like they don't know the answers, but they actually do know, they just need to process. These learners usually work better in group activities. Those learners that can work in a group but give them some time to process on their own, then they will share. Also what we should remember, keeping all of the rest in mind, is that you have learners who are more emotional, especially when they express themselves, and then you have your more rational learners. So when they are expressive learners and they're more emotional, they will express themselves in an emotional manner. They can demonstrate emotions, but they can also, when they answer, they will answer something like, I feel this and this and this, or I'm unhappy because of this and this and this. It becomes easier for them. Your rational, expressive learner will answer you by reasoning in a logic manner through the word. So the emotions may be a little bit less. They still have, it depends also on how rational they are, how emotional they are. Your receptive emotional learner uses their emotions to receive information, and while they're busy making sense, reflecting on it, there may be a lot of emotions involved with it. Then your receptive rational learner will also start to process the information, but they will reason through it. So they tend to overthink. They want to get answers with facts in it. They want to find proof, and sometimes the risk of that is that when a learner or student is really at risk of some form of emotional problems, etc., they do not realize or recognize the emotions. They go over into thinking mode, thinking too. So then we need to be aware of that too, also with ourselves, to make sure that we have both. We have a whole brain. There's some of it that may come natural, some of it that we must be aware of. Do I have a little bit more time? Okay. So Van Dam said, no, it's not surprisingly just listening to a presentation or lecture will not lead to learning. Then Krista works a lot on metacognition. So, and that's, a simple way to explain it is you're thinking about your learning, your experience about the learning process. And a metacognitive exercise that she included was something like write down the key idea concept that you've learned in this lecture. Identify your next step. In other words, how do you plan to implement what you've learned in your studies? Where and when can it be used? What other strategies are there that can work? How did today's lecture change or expand the way you think about whatever? Think, pair, and share. We may, we have the inclination to share the facts, to share information about a certain module, but our learners, our students, usually didn't learn a lot of metacognitive techniques at school. So we need to help them to learn it. That will also help them to master the work and then to be able to express it in an exam or test. So this is one way where you can actually help them to think about their learning process. And it may help to do that with a lot of your lectures, just to get them to focus on what they actually learn and how can they apply it. So maybe I must now stop and ask you, what's the key idea and what did you learn at the session? It's just a joke, but that's it. So that's my presentation.
Good, so you're done now.
I'm going to sorry.
Okay, thanks, Elsie. I think I'd like to a few things, but before I get there, anybody wants to ask something for more clarification or agree or disagree or comment on some of this, consider things.
No, I thought it was very interesting. I did the online meeting, my brain was 50-50, and I kind of had lots of things right. So I'm obviously like between. And I find the stuff I give to students is completely a mixture of both. I've got like mind maps, concept maps for them. But on the other hand, all that information I've also got another way they can access it, which is like lists where they can find it that way. So I sort of mix what I give them instinctively.
That's interesting, but you also have the balance between the two hemispheres. So I think that must have influenced your way that you think about presenting information
on the subconscious
to students. Sorry, I was thinking about letters. I was for really long in education.
Maybe I'm just curious. So, what's the feedback from
the students.
Do they like that? Or do they?
They seem to. Look, when I was using just like the picture-y ones, then I got some people were saying, oh, they'd rather have, because I moved away from PowerPoints, because I thought, I didn't want that linear thing. I wanted them to see the complete picture and how everything fitted together. So I thought that would be more beneficial for my subject. And then I thought, maybe be a bit kind and accommodate them a bit so they don't have to like wade through to go into the depths of thinking how these concepts actually. So I thought, let me give them this sort of list of stuff. And I only did that this year, so it's, I'm going to see how they respond to that in addition to. And then I give them the interactive one of the concept maps and then the one that they can just print out and look at as it is. So I kind of,
I'm just curious about this because maybe in law, and I think maybe in my mind, law students are a very particular type of student. In my mind, maybe more left brain, if I can use those terms.
well, we test left brain skills like logical thinking and
Yeah.
reasoning very much. I wanted them to see the complete picture, so I didn't want to just stick to that.
Which is also important for a lawyer. To have an overview of what actually is on the
And
table.
to practically apply whatever they learn.
Yes. Again, as I've said, you have both hemispheres. Your left hemisphere dominant people, especially when it gets too stressed, they go into the detail. So typically, students who can't, they just try to learn everything. They can't discriminate between what's important, what's not that important. Many of them are more left hemisphere dominant, and when they get too stressed, then they start to do that. For your right hemisphere dominant students, especially when they're too stressed, they seem to learn just the basics, and you will probably say to them in the exam, you didn't provide enough facts. They feel that they gave you the information, they draw the picture, but they didn't give enough facts.
All the time.
The details.
Yeah, when I'm studying.
Yeah, they should use both in this field of study.
Exactly, you need both.
Yeah. To better picture so that we as a lecturer, we have tapped into both hemispheres of the student as well.
That's where your cross-lateral exercises come in. And now can I ask you to demonstrate some of it? You didn't practice it anymore. Natasha. I had a session with the first year students a few weeks ago. And I said to them, I'm going to show you one or two exercises to help you to practice your cross-lateral function so that you can help your brain to stay integrated. Because it's something like keeping fit. You must practice it all the time. People who do sport that's cross-lateral, chances are that they're better integrated. People who do more creative stuff that's left hemisphere dominant, the chances are that they're more integrated. If you play like a guitar, it will help with integration. But now all of us are not into that. So easy is if you do this, you have your thumb and you put this finger on it, the index finger, and you take the thumb and you put it here on this index finger. You start to do this. Now we see. Thumb and index finger. Now we can. Yeah. But the longer you do this, cross-lateral, sorry, index thumb, we go like this, come and back. So the longer we do it, the faster we can do it, more effective we do it, the hemispheres start to integrate. Now let's make it a little bit more difficult. And I always struggle with this one. So you have your thumb and your pinky. Thumb and pinky. Then ring finger and thumb, ring finger and thumb. Middle finger and thumb, middle finger and thumb. Index finger and thumb, index finger and thumb. So now you must do that. So we're making it a bit more complicated. It's lots of practice to helps you, even your students can do it in class. So that will also help them to relax a little bit more and to work with the fuzziness of the brain. They can just do one or two of these exercises. Yes.
Comment on the exercises. So the first time that I did it, I didn't expect to do it, but I missed it. So I understand when you had diagrams on it, on left brain dominant, on left ear dominant. So all the information goes to this ear, goes to the right brain, and then it's across over to the other brain.
And the
before it
same
gets to
also.
that, yes, everything scrambles up. So I started doing this exercise. So every time that I need to write an essay or an article or I need to write something, I do these exercises and somehow I get it right. So the exercises does.
Sure, professional science for that.
You're doing the whole time.
But let's make it a little bit more interesting. So let's just think. Do that. That's even more difficult and to my help. Oh, sorry, right. Because I can just start doing the quicker act.
I'm gonna step or something.
I think that these many cross-lateral exercises, but if you can just start doing this more, it will help. And tell the students to do it and helping.
Sorry, so why is it just because you are making both sides and of your body and your brain constant?
Yes, to have them make the cross-lateral movement. So the left hemisphere must now speak with this side of your brain, of your body, and this side of your brain must speak to this side. So you're actually forcing everything to cross and cross all the time. So now all those neural networks start to cross each other.
And would you suggest that we do that, say, for example, on Friday morning at 8 o'clock when you've got a lecture that you should?
Maybe a good idea.
Or Friday afternoon at 3
And ask all the students to do that too. Maybe they will be able to concentrate a bit better.
I'm not showing it to them. I'll get a YouTube video.
I just think also then what happens in assessment when it's a high stress situation. So what happens to the left brain students and what happens left brain dominant and the right brain dominant, how the one switches on and the one switches off in the assessment event, and then what happens there. It's really useful, I think, that students also understand that. And I think that's part of why we always say start with easy questions in your assessment, that the stress levels doesn't start there right from the start. So you sort of start with easier, that they can get these things going, and then you come with the more difficult stuff after that. Not that you're even relaxing in a situation, but you feel more in control of it.
No, definitely. Also, if I get stuck in an assessment, what will help is if I do these exercises. Because not only does it help them to integrate the brain again, it also defocuses them from the questions that they must answer. So immediately, it can help switching on the brain again.
I just have a question here. When you said what Krista did there, the metacognition, I could see there some of the things that we from Center of Teaching and Learning tell lecturers, like PATS, classroom assessment techniques, the think, pair, share. So some things that you can do as formative assessment and get feedback from your students. So I could see that in, but what is there teaching and learning type activities that we can do for this cross-lateral exercises? So except we can do this, how can we do things with our content and within our teaching and learning, what we do to what maybe
Yeah, that's
switch on
exactly
both.
what I wanted to say. Cater for both hemispheres.
Yeah.
Because then, if we have right hemisphere dominant information, the right hemisphere, that is where the student's information will basically end. Going to a very simple explanation. But the left hemisphere will quickly switch on after that, because this natural ones already activated. So then you get the whole brain integration into the, they did the same with switching on the left hemisphere with information that helps the left hemisphere to, and then the right one will immediately start to work too, and they can do it.
Is there a way of to think or to look to do a bit of a research project on, for example, exam papers or test papers? Is there a way that one can see from what's written there whether it would switch on the left brain or the right brain? That one could. We sometimes do look at our question papers and say, well, this question the students struggle with, so we can look at that. But can we look at that with this in mind?
I'm sure.
Maybe the whole paper is switching on the left brain, so the students whose right brain dominated, they
You want to bring in elements of the other.
but that's the thing. So if we can see what we do, then maybe one can see how one can tweak it a little bit too.
I'm sure one can, but we must also check if there's not already research on that. Eric Jensen does a lot of work on it, but there's research on more for teachers and students. Can definitely be transferred to the higher education environment. The context just looks different. But I also want to say is that with most of the research on the brain-based learning, it's about equipping teachers and non-book as lecturers to teach in a brain-based friendly way. What we do here at SSQ is that we work with the student, we say to the student that in the world, sometimes you will get information that's more, that will be better and will be liked more and activate the left hemisphere. All the information may be packaged in a way that will be more nice, preferred by the right hemisphere. And then we help them on how they can take that information and change it to become more brain friendly. And I wish we had enough capacity to do research on that. So we actually really want to do the both sides to teach, to help the lecturers, but also to help the students.
I don't know how making a logical mistake now. Isn't the formal assessment of the university catering for the mental health university? How would you have, you could do, what do you call it? Flexible assessment, then you can use the right assessment.
What is it?
I'm just thinking about my first experience in 7 years, and I'm always at on the farm, and then I get them to answer what I suppose one might consider their questions, so not questions, but about a visual that they can place. So I think yes, maybe this is different, but I think there's so much opportunity for creativity to do different things. You can present that different information in the same way.
Yeah, it's very, there's a lot of ideas, but again, it's not always that practical. But traditionally, schools were created for left hemisphere dominant people, right eye, right ear, right hand, and that's why a lot of our kids, learners in school, and now here also out a little bit weird, so they learn in that. But that's why when we see the students, we help them to convey the information, to be more brain friendly. So with exam papers, it's difficult to do that, but hopefully with all the learning that they do in that manner, it will help them to answer the papers. But that picture that I had about the animals and the fish that I had to climb the tree, Einstein had a quote about learning and how we should have different ways of learning. And you know that Einstein left school because he did it before. I think that's a very good demonstration of the different preferences for learning.
see the students? What's the typical the student come to you? Are there students that say, you know, I'm not doing well, I'm going well? We see so many students, and I never know what advice to give. Just go up there, Victoria Street somewhere. What's the type of advice that you, or the type of service that you
A unit for school academic counseling development, we usually see those students because all of us are educational psychologists. So we hope we are trained in the learning process of people. But when they come to us, it's usually because they have concerns regarding their academics and how they learn and study for the academics. But this helps with everybody. The brain has plasticity. So you can still develop your brain more and more and more the way you use it to your own advantage. So we do get students who just come to develop themselves. But the majority of students who experience challenges. What we do when we have an intake interview, we get some background about how they currently work, and then we have an assessment that we do, a brain-based assessment. And according to that, we have a better idea of the profile of the student. And we do check with the student, we make sure that they agree with each one of the profiles. I think we test 12 different ones. We make sure that they agree with it, and then based on that, we help them with their status, how to prepare, how to work more effectively in a class, and then to learn and to answer the exams. So we do that for a lot of faculty's EDP program students. Natasha and your students are, for example, one of the EDP groups that we do it for. There is, unfortunately, it costs us money. So the company asks us 250 rand an assessment that we do it, so that's basically what we will ask for. Students can't pay it in the form of that. So we will never tell a student can't pay it. Actually, last prijs nog nie, dit het nog nie weer gebeur. Ek het ook sorry gehoor, dis die 1500.
So there's some we could just go online and check ourselves.
There may be something, but it's not valid. So you can do the MBTI online, but it's not valid. So you can get an idea. It doesn't mean it's the real thing.
I don't know whether it's interesting because we've got an agri-law Auxin today. People from agriculture and law, so we care about our students a lot. I mean, too. But if they oh, really we do? No, we do, but it doesn't mean that those who are not here that they don't. That's actually what I don't need to know. So that, do you also go into classes? To, for example, with a group of first year, or whatever, to give a lecture or an information system, do something that people can contact you.
Just please reach me.
Yeah.
No, but just for a session like this. Not just do the
information, but
the information session, because if Lisa now on Friday morning are going to ask you to do this, then you know it's not because of whatever, it's because of, you know.
So could we do that? Could we have the information session like
We
this?
can. We did that now for Natasha's students. But we must just please let me know well before the time, because we are at the moment I have 2 permanent websites in the unit and 2 interns. So we must plan for it. But then we can do it. All the work sessions are
Learn well. Learn well.
now we have work sessions that we present in the lunch hours.
Yeah, it's like a nominal fee.
No, there's no money to anymore. We And last year I think I did for free.
Krista said she will come and give us students
Yes.
sessions Thursday.
No, we prefer actually to do that because then we can work with a larger group of them and then we don't wait until they start. Because once you can now just imagine when they get here and they're already in state about their experience. And what we've heard now, it's not easy to help them. We can make them aware that there's a lot to change. So we will rather work with them before they have
So do the information session and then you have them then volunteer.
to come and do the assessment. What one can also do is if there's a group that wants to do the assessment and get the feedback, but they pay for it themselves, and you can get them together, we can do it for you too. But we get access to an online version. So they do it online, we can get the feedback with a report. So it's quite a comprehensive report.
Okay, so we can maybe do a sign-up session.
Yeah, I think I contact with you at your division and then yeah, so thanks Elmin from our side. When you drink your coffee. I need to stop now. I didn't get it. Thank you, I'm going to finish up. Thank you very much for standing in for Krista on such a short notice. I think you really did a brilliant job. Now, I just thought it's a nice way of getting some information that you don't necessarily always have time to. We're interested in, we know there's things that we work with every day. And then as you know, those of you regularly, we just want to feel like we've got something to share with about today's session. And I'm going to know if you, Chris, perhaps write your email address there. Okay. If you want to write it, what's up, please? And then thank you from my side. I hope you enjoyed the lunch and the presentation. And please, we'll see you again. And make contact with us all with Elmin.
Let's see how we can continue.